All right, welcome back, extraordinaires. ZM here, and today we're going to be talking about how there's a lot of men, early 20s who need a lot of help, and why, just having, successful men or men who have, been battle tested, as I like to call it, going to help them out is a stupid, moronic, and idiotic suggestion. And we're going to be talking about this because I hear this, accusation thrown around by both figures on, I'd say, the, American left and right that about these dudes, you just need like successful men, men who have overcome hurdles to, come and help them. And I'm gonna say, guys, that is completely not true. That is false. It is a lie from the pit of a McDonald's trash can. All right, now I'm gonna get into why. So a lot of people have this misconception that with these guys, you'll just be able to, get them out of their, chronically online mindset just by chatting with them, and that deep down these guys are very, very, smart people and they're open to help. Guys, that's not true. They're more passive aggressive than a turtle. They are the most passive aggressive people, and let me get into why. So first of all, that whole online pill stuff, that is their whole life. They can go on about this for hours, right? And I'm going to talk about, my personal experience trying to help one of these dudes out. So I used to have a friend, 6'5", and never had any woman in his life. Well, he had a woman like him in freshman year of high school, but he said it was weird because she had diabetes. That's actually what happened, right? So anyways, I was trying to help him out, with his numerous problems, and he would get angry and start reiterating these, stupid pill points like over and over. And when I would, just try to politely talk to him about, normal stuff that happens in the real world, he felt like, because I feel like what happens with a lot of these guys is that they get so attached to, hearing this stuff online because they do have mastery over it. If you can talk about something for hours and hours, you do have mastery over it. And since these guys, they don't have any mastery over anything else in their lives, they feel like they can't lose any sort of debate about something like that. So what happens is, he was willing to go on for hours and hours and just wear you down. Because if you're a person, who is successful or is doing good in your life, and I like to think I'm successful. I'm 22 years old, got 2 cars, I'm doing pretty great right now. And, I genuinely did, go and try to help this very disturbed individuals. And he would go on and on about this stuff for hours. And you just can't do that, when you're successful, because it will, number one, it'll drain your energy. Very, very bad. Like, these guys love to say society drains your energy. No, bro, you guys do. Like that, they'll drain so much of your energy because they'll just go on and on and on about this stuff. And it's not even because okay, let me just put it this way. If, this would actually like help them or anything like that to talk about their issues, or if they were debating in good faith, I wouldn't have an issue with it. But they are not debating in good faith. They are debating this topic for the sole purpose of trying to, outdo someone more successful than them. And this guy's 6'5" doing it, right? And I find that to be incredibly pathetic. And now let's get into a pretty good rebuttal for that, is that you have to take these people out in the real world. Well, number one, when somebody is that passive aggressive, especially a man, you don't want to take them out in front of any social group because you don't know who they might offend. And I have a lot of friends, especially now, coming back to LA and, being, in a pretty tight-knit success circle that would just straight up, call out that kind of passive-aggressive behavior. But you really don't know what that person is going to do while they're out, right? And so the next rebuttal will be, okay, well, take them out one-on-one and try to show them the world. And I kind of agree with that because I believe if, a man is dejected, you can't just tell him about his potential because deep down they probably realize, okay, I had this potential at some point, you know what I mean? Or I have strengths in this area. You have to show them that so they can, get reinvigorated or maybe, find an opportunity. So I agree with that, right? So I tried to help this dude out, right? And he hated going to the city where, our Catholic, high school was. He hated going to downtown, that area, because his reputation was kind of bad there. I'm not going to lie. He asked out some women in some pretty cringy ways, all right? In some pretty cringy ways. So I decided to, we would go all the way down to like the city that was, down more in my area, pretty nice part of town, and just, help, just go out and try to, live life. Now I realized that he was telling me one day, man, I want to get some, up-to-date pictures. Now, in the area I'm in, you can either go to the mall, and this was around December time, around 2 years ago, right? You can either go to the mall, or there's a picture place that's right in like I would say City Plaza, where it's less people, less kids, and a little bit more exclusive to where you can really go and get some photos. So I go in there, right, and I end up paying for everything. I pay for the lights, I pay for the whole thing, and I do that to help him out because he said, "Hey man, I'm a few dollars short, so of course I'm going to help my boy out." And we go in there and we're just getting ready to take the pictures. And I guess this girl, she complimented the shirt I was wearing, and he just did this like I don't know how to explain it. It was super awkward, like this expression he got. And during one of the photos, I just go and I put my thumb up, right, or like pretty much just like that. And he goes and he's like, and remember, I'm paying for everything. He's like, that's so childish that you would put your thumb up as loud as you can. And I'm like, all right, hold on there, hot shot, who nobody has ever called hot. How in the world can you say that when I'm trying to help your toilet face out? I'm trying to help you out, bro. And I straight up told him, bro, you're just mad because no woman has ever really cared about you like that. I told him that. And yes, guys, I know this is harsh, but you're 6'5". That is one of the most apex heights a guy can be ever, right? And you're acting like that. Like, nah, bro, nah. And he just said, well, he was talking real kind. Of course you'd say something like that. That's not how he sounds, but that was the tone he kind of used, and he was kind of, a little dejected. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt a little bad seeing him, get that type of reaction. My brother told me that he wouldn't have felt bad at all. But anyways, I want to say this is not a one-off. Now, let's get into my boy Jack. Now, anybody who's been to prep schools will know exactly the type of person I'm talking about. Jack is one of those people who most will consider quote-unquote mean, but isn't called out. You know what I mean? Like, people just kind of let his criticism slide, and he always, lands pretty well on his feet. Like, he'll take that trip to South America you're telling him not to take, but then, he'll make it back on the stock like 2 months later, and everyone's like, dang, that just happened? And also Jack, he has a lot of, a lot of humor, a lot of jokes, a lot of cracks, a lot of very, very, witty cracks, sometimes at the wrong time. But he has a cousin, and I remember his cousin was, like just the man when, we would all hang out, we would go down to like Cleveland, and we would go down to like Houston sometimes, at high school and stuff like that, So he was pretty cool there, but, he kind of, fell off, went through some horrible things, with his grandpa, and, he became a little socially awkward. So Jack decides, okay, I'm going to take this guy out, right? He was telling me about it, and I said, that's a great idea. Now, here's what ends up happening. Apparently, while they were out getting ready to go to a party, somebody falls down, and they kind of injure their knee. And Jack says, kind of loudly, oh, man, that's a little bit funny. Now, I'm telling you, this is tame for Jack. Anybody who knows a Jack who has gone to, like, any sort of private school will know exactly what I'm talking about. This is very tame, and all of a sudden, bro, who he tries to help out, his own cousin, just starts saying, you're a horrible person. You're not a good guy. When spoiler alert, this dude used to be the biggest bully in the world and had openly said, like, I remember a few months back, Jack was telling me, he had said, he missed being a bully. So clearly he wasn't saying that to, help improve his cousin. He was saying that because he was jealous of Jack. Straight up. He was jealous of Jack. He was jealous of this opportunity, even though Jack is the only dude who would give him an opportunity like that. And I'm sure there are tons of guys out here who would kill for these type of opportunities that Jack and my friend have done. Not literally. We got to say that because look at the year we're in. It's been a crazy year. So we have to say not literally, but they would really be very grateful for an opportunity like that. And here are how these guys are acting about it, right? And now I got another story. So if you guys remember the Vanderbilt girl I was talking about in that other video, I'm not sure if we're going to take it down or what, but anyways, I was talking to her and she was telling me just about how her sister tried to, date this dude who was kind of on that pill philosophy stuff. He would debate it with her, like for hours and hours. And so not even, a girl coming to their life, it doesn't even help these dudes in that situation, which is just insane. But guys, this is 3 different stories. And I see how, like, on their spaces, like, online on Twitter. And the worst thing is that they tag things like masculinity, Christianity, self-made. They tag this in their little, like I think Twitter Spaces or X Spaces, and they're going on for 16 hours, 50 hours, bro. And bro, and if you're putting self-made and you've been on a stream, yes, sometimes 50 hours, bro, you probably haven't even made your bed, so you can't call yourself self-made. You know what I mean? And they're just going on here and they're ranting and ranting, and they really are. These guys, a lot of them are just like that in real life. You know what I mean? They're very combative, and this passive aggressiveness, it comes from, like I said, mostly high school, because I watch these videos, all those videos. Oh, I'm 21 and my life is so sad. I watched some of those videos, and it's always one thing which I call the social one shot. It was one social experience, and these guys decided to completely help, take themselves out of the game. And most of the time, it wasn't even physical. It wasn't even battle tested. And bro, it's sad because I know a dude right now who funded an AI startup, right, out in California, and he lost a parent very tragically at 16. And I'm gonna mention height because everyone's so obsessed with height. Is only 5'6". And his car broke down on him when he had his first internship. And right now, he made that app. He got his startup right after. Right after that, he was able to work through it. So I can't take seriously all these dudes who, because a lot of these guys actually are over 6 feet, right, and stuff like that. And I'm 6 feet myself, and who have come from a lot better circumstances and are still acting that way, because a lot of these guys hide behind people's perception of being like that, to get sympathy, where it's like, oh, these are just very, very short dudes who don't have any family. No, typically these guys come from pretty structured families in some cases. They just take themselves out. And now I'm noticing something horrible is that they're giving this bad advice to even younger people so that they can, socially one-shot themselves and not want to do anything in their lives either. And that's one of the main reasons I'm making content, because I find the social one-shot to be one of the most dangerous things for young men, right? And yeah, and I keep saying this, guys, over and over. And the main reason I'm telling these stories once again is that forcing guys who have been through stuff, or people who are successful, or people who have like just leadership skills and stuff, like expecting them to go and take their time to help these dudes and saying you're a bad man if you're not. That is a truly disgusting and horrendous thing to say. And for those of you who are wondering what happened, with the 6'5" loser, pretty much my brother, his Oma, and his dad were like, yo, bro, time to cut that loser. And that's exactly pretty much what happened. I completely distanced myself, and apparently things got a lot worse. And another misconception about these guys is that that they're just these secret geniuses, right? And that they're being left out. Now here's the thing, a lot of these dudes, they do have a lot of potential, right? I can, intellectually, they do have a lot of potential, right? However, these guys, they just refuse to learn and grow. So one of my friends, he does a little bit of an economics podcast, and he's got this one friend who, was a little awkward, but a very, very, just a cool and amazing, like really just an amazing person when he wants to be, pretty much. And but he just won't change his ways. And he'll kind of get really emotional and have these outbursts when he tries to change them. And it's so bad that it goes on this podcast, right? When he's a guest. And I'll give an example. So my friend, him, and this girl, they were, all talking, right? They were just all talking. And he just interjects and says, hey guys, can I tell a story? And they're like, yeah. And remember, this is all about economics, right? And this is about, how crazy, just quarter four has really been, right? Just of the year. And he starts talking about, his grandfather finding a toy, this toy, right? Or something. And he goes on for 2 minutes. And, I called him after and I said, bro, you got to call him out again, or just tell him to get off the podcast, because you can't, be wasting a successful person's time. He's like, nah, man, I don't want to do it. I really don't. Even though this guy has been doing this stuff for years. Just, and I understand he's probably got some stuff going on, bro. But it's bro, you cannot be just interjecting, throwing things off, messing with people's bottom lines. That's not right. And here's what I mean, where this person is smart, right? Because obviously they can talk economics, but They just refuse to learn from any of their mistakes, and that you cannot have that high of, you know what I mean? You cannot have that high of intellectual potential, when you're doing that. Like, as I just said, I think they do have, high intellectual potential, but it's capped. You know what I mean? I think it's capped around a person who has, slightly above average intelligence, probably at best. You know what I mean? Because they keep doing the same things over and over, but they're not these, geniuses, right? They're not these super, super geniuses, because if they were, they would not be acting like this. And, lastly, they say, these guys would be, accepted if given a chance into, elite circles. And I want to talk about my time in California this summer, with my brother, right? And we went out to Orange County because, my brother, his parents, they live in Irvine. And, we went to this lounge, and there was a dude there, and he had one of the most stunning sisters I've ever seen, right? And, we were all talking, and we were at like a pretty, well-known place in Orange County. We were just hanging out, in Irvine. And, he told me, you're a very, very, like, smart dude. He told me that to myself. He says, I can tell, you've put your education to good use. And he basically told me he was fine, with me, with probably like just flirting with his sister. He had no issue with it. Because pretty much, I actually should call her, but pretty much he was telling me, yeah, bro, I can tell, you're a very, just a hard worker. And first of all, that was very nice to hear. First of all, but I'm gonna tell you something. To these, and I call them, doom-ridden dudes, they're not gonna hear anything like that. And it has nothing to do with height, because like I said, my former friend was 6'5" and was just this big, big loser, just like that, right? It has nothing to do with height or anything like that. It's because they refuse to learn themselves. They focus on the wrong stuff for hours. And, finally, they're not that good of people, right? They're just not. If you're willing to get passive aggressive and argue and fight all the time, then, bro, you guys need a serious reality check. First of all, stop doing that. And if somebody who has skills that you want to have, right, and they offer to help you, you take that help. You know what I mean? You take it, and you don't act like a passive aggressive toilet face, all right? You do not act like that. That's not how men act. It's unprofessional, and it is very irresponsible as well. And extraordinaires, I want to leave with this. If you're a guy and you realize, okay, I've been doing that passive aggressive nonsense too, or heck, maybe, you've targeted, other people who you thought were beneath you when, you're really kind of a loser deep down, because let's be honest, that behavior, that's what that is. Number one, you can still change, right? You can still change and stop it. Just stop, and you can instantly become a better person, right? Because as I said, I do think there is intellectual potential with a lot of you guys, all right? Second, to the younger dudes, and I gotta say it again, do not socially one-shot yourself, right? Watching these videos where this dude's like, oh, I went to a soccer camp, and, I was only able to talk to a few people, but I couldn't really, get in a social group, and it felt bad, and then, I was so introverted in high school off that. And the reason I'm saying that is because I actually heard this in one of those videos, right? So let me get this straight. You're able to talk to people at the camp. You do better than a lot of people who are socially awkward. And then just because you're not, the king of the soccer ring or football for all my European brothers, you end up just giving up entirely. And no, right? So number one, you got to avoid that as well, right? Because once you're in your 20s and stuff like a lot of these guys are, it's going to be so much harder for you to integrate. All right. And then, lastly, I want to say this. Do not listen to any of these courses either. Course kids are another side of the same coin. They are a group of people who I think started off with noble intentions, but as they got the influence, the same degeneracy they were trying to fight against, they became a part of that system, and they have, they just gone wild. Like I got some stories, buddy. But yeah, guys, so I was talking, so yeah, again, this video is about the biggest misconception that, successful men probably have to deal with involving, all of these, like, incel type dudes or just, loser type dudes. Because some of these dudes in their videos, they've talked about having multiple girlfriends and stuff and then feeling like, life is still horrible. So that's my biggest misconception. Successful dudes taking times out of their day to go and help them who are in that same age range is not the answer. Anyways, extraordinaires, I hope you do great, and I hope you make the world a great place, and yeah, take care.